TelecomTV, where ICT connects.
ARRIS'S Group is a long-standing provider of technology to the cable industry primarily. ARRIS made a big change this last year by acquiring the home business of Motorola, the home business being the video-centric and broadband-centric business for cable and telco service providers of Motorola. And ARRIS acquired that from Google, where Motorola Home had been domiciled for some period of time. And for ARRIS, it's a huge change in our corporate strategy because it means that we can expand our product portfolio significantly. We move into a lot more markets, particularly into the telco market for technology for telco service providers as well as cable. And it gives us a significant expansion in our international reach as well. A number of strategic changes underway in the cable market. Perhaps primarily amongst those, the ongoing push for more bandwidth and more speed through the downstream, as well as increasingly the upstream for data, driven, of course, a lot by video over the internet. But for the cable service providers, they also have another strategic decision to make over the next few years, which is, do they actually move all of their TV distribution to IP as well? Whereas today it's segmented between what goes over the kind of QAM RF digital TV infrastructure versus what goes over broadband data. In future, that will become all IP, and so the balance point is imminent in terms of when that starts to happen. And ARRIS is right in the middle of all those decisions that are going on right now. So I think our level of supply to the telecoms industry in the video space has actually been reasonably long-standing. It's not perceived as a new thing for us to get to talk to telco service providers, certainly from our Motorola Home history. But equally, of course, depending on the market we're talking about, video has been potentially a poor relative to the core voice and data services offered by the telecom service providers, whereas for the cable operators, it was, of course, always the core part of their offering. Nonetheless, I think what we're seeing in recent years and months particularly is a recognition that a compelling entertainment and TV service offering is absolutely critical for telecom service providers, just as it is for cable operators. With one very high-profile example not far from here being BT moving very heavily to invest in content as a hugely important strategic move for them to protect their broadband data delivery, which was where they were being somewhat marginalised by their lack of premium video and TV content in their offer, and so it's a hugely big and significant step for them to move into that space. Absolutely, and I suppose one of the challenges and opportunities that we have here in the Europe and Middle East and Africa region compared to our US colleagues is that every time we go and talk to a different customer, there's potentially a different market dynamic that we have to understand if we're to correctly position our technology and best serve the customers in those markets. And it does vary hugely. Some markets have moved very quickly to be supportive of telco TV initiatives. France would perhaps be the outstanding example there, where you have 3 very successful IPTV operations competing for customers against the cable incumbents and against the broadcast TV industry, not to mention the satellite providers. But where IPTV really took off in terms of broadband IPTV delivery. And in the UK, it's been a little bit more slow to develop because content was owned by the gorilla in the market of Sky TV, and now as that starts to become a more competitive environment in terms of bidding for that content, you're seeing other providers catching up. So it does vary hugely. Over in Eastern Europe, we're seeing a little bit of a lag in terms of the rate of adoption of the services, and it's perhaps more of a traditional cable market over there. But the telcos are also starting to make very significant moves. ARRIS'S customers are service providers, the more traditional service providers, if you like, in terms of the cable and telco service providers in the market. Certainly for those guys, the threat of over-the-top video has been a theme of the last few years. we're seeing that conversation rapidly evolve now to a new level, whereby the service providers are looking to leverage their strategic position as the providers of connectivity to build out a more complete set of video service offerings, which might include their own video content, as well as seamlessly bringing in over-the-top video from the OTT players. And we've seen recent announcements from the likes of Netflix partnering with Virgin for Netflix to become an app on the Virgin TiVo service, as very much supporting that. And we're seeing that across the board. There seems now to be much less protectionism, if you like, about the walled garden approach. I think that one's probably run its course now completely through its various iterations. And I think the telco service providers and the cable service providers see that having a control point in the home around a box through which they can deliver some kind of compelling, all-encompassing experience is really a competitive differentiator for them when it comes to the likes of competing against the pure over-the-top players. Well, there are a number of interesting dynamics there. Perhaps forefront amongst them would be content rights and whether service providers particularly have the rights to distribute premium content from their cloud, or whether it has to be distributed through a more traditional TV network to some kind of home gateway and then distributed on. If you take the Sling box example, Sling is able to actually deliver content to a gateway, and then for you to cast it outside the home in their retail model. And content providers have kind of become okay with that. They see it as a way to ensure that more people are taking more premium subscriptions at home, so that they can watch if they can watch their content when they're travelling, for example, or away, they're more likely to sign up for premium services at home. And telco and cable service providers are also exploring that dynamic. The economics and the cost base of putting more technology into the cloud is compelling for the operators. At the end of the day, a set-top box with a hard disk drive is more expensive than a set-top box without a hard disk drive. So the more of that technology you can put in the cloud, the better on aggregate. At the same time, content rights and getting the content rights to be able to do that, as well as the broader experience around what you're delivering, depending on the quality of your access network, depending on the quality of your backhaul network and how much bandwidth you've got, how much traffic is competing in that network for attention as it's multiplexed through. All of those dynamics differ from operator to operator and are dictating the speed at which they can move those services into the cloud. And we see a long runway yet for home set-top boxes and gateways to exist, and for the service offering to be centred off those by the cable and telco service providers for a good number of years yet. Of course, they'll get they'll reduce in size, they'll consume less power, they'll become more efficient. The software, the CPU speeds and the memory will increase in power, so that the experience will become more compelling. The range of services that they support will start to increase rapidly as well. Home automation services, remote health monitoring by your hospital or your doctor. All of these are things where the service provider has that foot in your door and wants to expand their capability to offer you more as a customer and a subscriber. And they're in a better position to do that than a lot of the over-the-top service providers, if they can move quickly enough and be innovative enough in order to capture those markets.
TelecomTV, where ICT connects.